Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Stingaree from 1934, and this continues my quest to review as much of William Wellman's filmography as I possibly can within the year of 2013. Now, this is one of the lost RKO films. I think it's the only Wellman film he made for RKO, because through most of the pre-code era, he was with Warner Brothers, and before that he was with Paramount. I don't know of any other RKO films he had done, and it was part of Turner Classic Movies found several RKO films that had believed to have been lost. There were like 4 or 5 of them, and there was kind of like a legal dealing. After Marion C. Cooper believed they didn't give him all the money for his producer's contract, RKO agreed to give him the rights to several of their films. This was one of them, as well as several others, and he only re-released them in New York once in the mid-50s, and then had them play on TV in the mid-50s, and that seems to be the last anybody had ever heard of them until I think it was like 2007 that they played on TV and then were released on DVD. I think it was 2007. So that was quite a long time for these films to just be completely unavailable. There's several obscure Wellman films that I've reviewed that might have gotten a weird video release or got a bootleg video release or got played on some obscure station in some weird part of the world. But these films were completely gone for years and years and years. And Stingaree is one of them. It's kind of obscure, but not really, because I feel like that was kind of a big deal when Turner Classic Movies replayed them, and I know a lot of people who watched all of those lost RKO films. So I think this film has become much more popular recently, but it's still not very well known because it was just gone for so long. Also, it's not the best remembered film, so that doesn't help. This film takes place in Australia in 1874. A ward, Hilda, played by Irene Dunne, who is living with a very rich family. They're rich because they made lots of money on the sheep trade in Australia. The mother, Miss Clarkson, played by Mary Boland, pretends that she's going to have a great singing career, and she's pretty tone deaf and pretty awful. It's kind of a running joke throughout the movie. Irene Dunne's Hilda has a wonderful singing voice, but she won't let her sing because she wants all the glory for herself, especially with famous composer Sir Julian Kent from England coming to town for a big party Miss Clarkson is having. She wants to show off her singing skills so that she can be discovered. But then a famous outlaw, Stingaree, played by Richard Dix, is in town, and he comes to the Clarkson's residence when she is gone off to find Julian Kent, and tells Hilda she has to leave before she gets back because she doesn't want her around to see Mr. Julian Kent. So Stingaree shows up, pretends he's Julian Kent, gets her to sing for him, thinks she's wonderful. Then it's all discovered what's going on, and he takes her with him and convinces Julian Kent, kind of by gunpoint really, and everyone by gunpoint, to listen to her singing, and that starts off her wonderful singing career, and Stingaree gets arrested, and the film goes on from there. This film's odd and interesting in a lot of different ways because it's combining kind of a Western theme with this operatic theme, and coincidentally, since the next film I'm going to review is A Star is Born, this film has similarities to A Star is Born and similarities to a lot of Wellman films where someone makes a big sacrifice for somebody else so someone else can succeed. You could also say So Big has that in it as well. Richard Dix's character Stingaree kind of sacrifices himself and his own reputation to get Hilda this amazing singing career that she rightfully deserves. But this film doesn't really feel very Wellman. I mean, it certainly has a lot of the Wellman staples in it, sacrificing herself for someone else, the rain sequence, because Wellman loves rain sequences, and there's kind of sympathy to this outlaw Stingaree, which is pretty typical Wellman, and he's always very sympathetic to the outlaws. It feels more like kind of just a normal, fun Hollywood studio film. A lot of times I'd hang out at my grandmother's condo at the retirement home, and we'd watch like a fine TCM movie. Sometimes we just watch like whatever was on. There'd just be like a fine little studio picture. It'd be nice and whatever. It wouldn't be too great, but we'd have a nice time. And that's kind of how I think of Stingaree. I don't think of Stingaree as like a great Wellman film. I don't think of it as a bad Wellman film. I don't think it's all awful or anything. It just like didn't really impress me or make me think like, oh, this is like his documentary style. Shows his lean filmmaking. It shows a lot of stuff that would come up in A Star is Born, but that's pretty much it. I mean, it's kind of like for fans of Wellman or Irene Dunne. I don't see what's so special about this film in itself, and it's not going to hurt you having never seen it. I did like some of the performances. I think Richard Dix as Stingaree, I actually quite liked him. It seems like no one else really liked him that much. I guess he wasn't very edgy in it. That's the kind of thing, it doesn't have the edge that a lot of Wellman pre-codes do, and this is kind of towards the end of the pre-code era, with the code being enforced in 1934. This was probably made before the code. She does kind of strip in front of them. They kind of insinuate they probably did it once or twice, but that's about it, and they're very loose assumptions. I almost didn't notice them. I like Irene Dunne. I believe this is the only time she worked with Wellman. I'm not sure. I don't think she gives kind of a typical female Wellman performance, certainly at the beginning where she's playing the ward, but when she gets richer and wealthier, it doesn't feel as authentically Wellman. I mean, really, this is the thing is with doing an older director and going through all his films and reviewing them versus a newer director is they really just had to make studio vehicles sometimes. And for whatever reason, I don't know why Wellman just did this film for RKO. Was the money really good? What happened? I don't understand all of that. It was a fine little classic older film, and I enjoyed it for that. The other Wellman films I've seen, I think, give me kind of a reason to watch them, or are a good example of this and that. And this is just kind of a weird little strange movie, mixture of kind of an opera musical type of thing. It's probably the closest he's ever really gotten to a musical. He never really made a musical. I like Mary Boland as the mother. I think she's kind of funny in a lot of, especially like the constant singing thing. I mean, it took a lot of talent to do singing that bad. And Irene Dunne kind of has a vulnerability about her that you really want to follow. You can really see in her eyes where her heart really lies in this film. You know, you can always tell what she's really thinking just by looking at her face. I like Stingaree. He's interesting. He really sacrifices himself. You really feel for him throughout the film. But he's a lot more like kind of a cardboard cutout, because at the beginning of the film he has a lot of good character moments, but by the end he's just kind of like this smiling hero. You know, there's nothing really that complicated about him. I mean, it's complicated that he did all this, and that's interesting as a character, but it just feels like as an actor, Richard Dix was just having him smile and be like, hey, what's up, Hilda? Let's do this. I had seen some of the Lost pre-code films before. None of them, you know, that's the thing, is like a lot of times when films are lost, not all of them end up being great. I've noticed most of the time when there's a film that's hard to find and I do eventually get to see it, more often than not, it's not as remarkable as my imagination made it out to be. And you might say, oh, well, you made these impossible expectations, but it's also like these films aren't really that exceptionally amazing. Sometimes, you know, a film gets discovered and suddenly it becomes like one of the best films of all time and we're all the happier for it. But Stingaree certainly isn't one of them. But it's not a bad movie. It's a fine like 30s studio film. It's a nice afternoon watching a 30s movie. You'll be fine with it. But if you're a Wellman's film and you're trying to see some of his better work, this certainly isn't it. And I'm still wondering, why was he at RKO for this movie? What was the deal? It's not even very RKO either. It's just like like this could have, I don't know, it could have been done in any studio, I think. But I had a good time regardless of all of that. So, you know, what's the harm in that, I guess. So if you have seen Stingaree and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And the next film in my William Wellman series will be, as I said before, A Star is Born. And that will be next week between Monday and Thursday. And I hope to see you then.